Welcome back to Learn Your Stripes. I'm Ryan Guillory.
And I'm Michael Moran, and today we're going to talk about field goal mechanics, scrimmage play mechanics, and overtime. But before we get going on all that, we're going to cover the play from last week's episode. So we'll get into it. 2nd and 4 at the B36. A, whose cadence has involved a clap throughout the game, is driving. B47 knows this, comes to the line and claps. And all 5 offensive linemen move. And so we asked what the foul was, if there's a difference between high school and college, what your down and distance would be, game clock and play clock. So in high school, this is considered a disconcerting act. It's a dead ball foul and a 5-yard penalty. In college, it's very similar. It's a dead ball delay of a game foul enforced 5 yards from the succeeding spot. And the college rule specifically states that no defensive player may use words or signals that disconcert opponents when they're preparing to put the ball in play. No player can call defensive signals that simulate the sound of a cadence or otherwise interfere with the offensive signals.
We mentioned a few weeks ago having a guest on our episode last week. Due to some scheduling conflicts, though, we're slightly delayed, but we'll have a guest on the next couple of weeks. For now, though, we're going to finish the new Indiana High School Mechanics Manual.
Yep.
As Michael mentioned, one of those mechanics is field goal mechanics. For field goals, the referee will assume an initial position 5 yards behind and 8 to 10 yards to the side at approximately a 45-degree angle to the holder on the side facing into the holder. The referee needs to be wide enough to be able to see all 11 offensive players in a traditional field goal formation. The angle here is more important than the distance. R counts the K players and signals to the crew, signals that K is in a scrimmage kick formation, signals that the ball will remain alive if the kick is blocked or if it's short in the field of play, and then they'll focus on the kicker and the holder. They'll keep staring at them after the ball is kicked and because they have to rule any contact on the kicker or the holder. R needs to watch for a fumble or a muff by the holder and rule accordingly. R assists in the coverage of your sideline if it's a run or a pass. Once there's no longer any threat to the kicker and holder, the referee picks up the officials under the crossbar and signals for a score or no score.
And for the umpire here, we're looking at an initial position. The manual talks about 4 to 7 yards, so around the same area you normally start. And you're counting the K players, which would be just like counting the offense, and give your signal there. We're going to look for numbering exceptions. That's something you can pregame too if you have a chance to do that, and go around and look at scrimmage formations and identify any numbering exceptions. Remind the defense to stay off the snapper. Use that verbal acuity there. Be nice and loud and tell the defense to stay off. And once the ball snaps, step towards the neutral zone. Check out all that action. You're looking at the interior lineman, especially the action on the snapper because he's vulnerable. Be ready to assist the referee if there's a short or a block kick, and you also are responsible for knowing if the kick crossed the neutral zone. You can help out with that. You might have to assist in some goal line coverage if there's a run or pass. Just be prepared. And I should highlight, too, we're talking about a traditional field goal kick here. So you might be out, from the 15, 20, 30. Some kids nowadays have a leg up to even 40 yards. Who knows? So just be prepared and be ready to move. Once the players go past you, pivot and be ready to observe any set of blocks that happen if we've got a broken play. Now we'll get into the wings, and this is where it gets kind of fun in 5-man, again, depending upon how far out you are for your field goal. So whichever wing official is opposite the referee's initial position, or in other words, looking at the holder's back. So Ryan kind of alluded to this earlier. The referee is looking towards the holder. So if a field goal attempt comes out and you see the holder's back as the wing, be ready to if you see the referee come up on your side, be ready to go. And Ryan's going to talk about that later. I got ahead of myself there. If you see the holder's back, be ready to stay, I guess I should say. So you're going to have your regular position on the line of scrimmage. Count the receiving players, signals to your crew there that you've got that. Watch for any neutral zone infractions, false starts, offsides. And if a pass or run play develops, or if we've got the fire call, be ready to move. And we're going to cover it like a scrimmage play, and we'll talk about that a little later. And if we have to, if the goal line's threatened, obviously get down there, move down, and use some cross-field officiating to help pick up any spots that might be gained from that broken play. Now, Ryan, what's happening if you're the wing on the other side and the referee comes to your side?
Well, if you see the referee coming your way, that means you're going to the crossbar. And you can really help out your wings if you're a referee or if it's your team that's kicking here by getting on the radio and announcing tee is in, block is in, whatever it takes to let everybody know that there's a kick. Because if the kicker's coming off the opposite sideline from me, it's difficult sometimes to know until the last minute who's coming in and what the next play is going to be. But essentially under the crossbar, we'll have the back judge and whichever wing is on the same side as the referee. They'll both assume an initial position on the end line or just behind it so that you can look directly up the upright and rule whether the ball passed completely inside the upright. Both count the R players and give a signal for that count. You'll identify and verbally confirm to one another the numbers of eligible players on your side of the offensive formation. The back judge is responsible for the play clock like always. Once the ball is kicked, the back judge has responsibility for his upright as well as the crossbar, and then the wing who's under has responsibility for his upright. Once the kick passes the upright or is obviously unsuccessful, the back judge should sound his whistle. On kicks that go down the middle or kicks that obviously fail, both officials should simultaneously step out a yard in front of their upright, pause for a moment, and then without looking at one another, signal the score, holding it until the referee makes eye contact and then dropping it simultaneously, or no score, twice, while facing the line of scrimmage. Now you can communicate with one another verbally to ensure that you have the same signal. You don't want to say good or no good. Typically what we'll say is yes, 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 or no, no, no. That way we'll know exactly what signal we're going up with. If there's a kick that threatens an upright though, only the official on that threatened upright should step out and signal. If the kick is blocked, or if there's a fake or a scramble, the wing official who's under the crossbar needs to move down the end line to the pylon in order to rule on the sideline, and his next move would be up to the goal line to assist there. The back judge remains on the end line and has their normal goal line situation responsibilities. All officials, though, need to be aware of the situation and look for the tee coming onto the field, moving quickly to field goal positions. Communicate by signaling that the ball remains alive until the kick ends if it's unsuccessful. And if it's fourth down, remind the crew members that the clock will stop at the conclusion of the play, regardless of the outcome, by giving the dead clock signal. Now, Michael, any differences with the try?
No, the try is going to be nearly identical. So the only saving grace with the try is usually we're coming off of a touchdown. Almost always we're coming off of a touchdown, rather. So there is a little bit of a dead period before we chop it back in. So I think the important thing here is good crew communication. If you do have a field goal attempt, Ryan and I, we both scout our teams on Friday nights beforehand. So take a look at the kickers, see kind of what they're capable of. And even during the game, if you don't get a chance, check during warm-ups, or, if that opening kickoff, that kicker can boot it out of the back of the end zone. Chances are he's might have a pretty good leg and might be used later on. So, if you're 30, 40 yards out, it's time to test that 40 speed and see if you can get under the goal line. But we don't want to pull a hamstring, so always be prepared.
Yeah, and one other difference here is that the referee takes the whistle instead of the back judge. And remember that on a try, if the defense gains possession, the ball is dead.
It's dead immediately, correct.
And if the kick is obviously unsuccessful, it's dead. So, one difference from the field goal, because a field goal could, in theory, remain live, if it's unsuccessful and doesn't cross into the end zone or out of the back of the end zone or, any of those things that would make it a dead ball.
Correct. So let's jump into some scrimmage plays now. I think this is kind of the meat and potatoes, kind of what we've been waiting for. We've talked about kicks and pregame and what to do leading up to, but this is the stuff we're doing every other play and being ready to go. So most of the plays are coming this way. Most of the plays are going to happen in this sort of action. We're looking at run plays. We're looking at pass plays, and this is where you get your snaps. So we'll talk about the referee first. In that initial position, you need to have the ability to see the game clock and the play clock operators. That way they can see you if you have to signal to stop the clock or start the clock. Your initial position is roughly 13 yards, maybe up to 11 yards off the line of scrimmage, and as wide as a tight end position. So try to envision a tight end if there isn't one. If they come out in 5 wide, line up where that tight end would be. And you can always adjust yourself based upon the ball. If we're closer to the hash, you may come in. Especially if it's a right-handed quarterback, we're on the right hash, you may have to come in a little tighter so you're not too snug. But on that same note, you're going to be on the same side as the quarterback's arm. You want to be able to see the far tackle and all the backs. You're going to count the A players and signal to your wing officials. And on our crew, our referee and umpire are signaling to each other when they're counting the offense. You'll declare the ball ready for play. It's that may be the case with the 25-second play clock. That may have to happen. If we're using the 40 as we are, we're going to be running right after the end of the play, so just be ready for any sort of fast action there. Check for a 1-second count after a huddle or a shift or any snap irregularities. Be alert for any illegal shift or any sort of player in motion you may have to pick up. Identify all your eligible backs, and after the snap, key on the tackle on the opposite side, unless that formation kind of dictates otherwise, and we'll talk about that a little later when we talk about keys. You're going to be responsible for the ball and the runner and all that action around them until the runner makes their way up to the neutral zone. Don't be in too much of a hurry to move towards the line of scrimmage. That way you can avoid getting caught up in the action or having to backpedal to scramble out of there, and it helps keep a wider vision too. So you're responsible for the runner all the way until he crosses the neutral zone, and at that point you'll give him off to a wing. You need to be alert for some of the following things real quickly, just to hit on the manual touches about illegal use of hands by A, any action away from the ball or behind the ball, action on the quarterback. He's your key. He's your primary responsibility. Whether the pass is forwards or backwards. We'll talk about some of that later on too when we get into goal line mechanics. Now, if the ball becomes dead behind the neutral zone, be alert and know where that ball is. You might have to help your wings if they drifted downfield, and move quickly to that spot to get that forward progress spot. After the ball becomes dead, check to make sure the down marker is correct and the rest of the crew is ready for the ball before you allow it to be put into play. If the line to gain is made or possession changes, stop the game clock unless it's already been stopped. And it's not necessary to go up near the line of scrimmage after every play, but go there when you need to see if the line of gain has been reached or made, or if there's other purposes you need to communicate with your crew. Otherwise, stay back. That we can help with substitutions and keep the game flowing. What about other side of the ball, Ryan? Umpire, what's going on there?
Sure. Until we have a center judge, the umpire, of course, is going to be responsible for spotting the ball and holding up the play until the referee either signals the ready for play or releases the umpire to move. Once that's spotted and they move off the ball, the umpire wants to be 4 to 7 yards behind B's defensive line and between A's tackles. Now, the umpire can adjust to a deeper position if it's needed, depending on the position of the linebackers and the play situation. If the teams are at or near the line of scrimmage, don't turn your back on those teams. It's recommended that unless the formation or field position dictates otherwise, you line up on the side opposite of the referee. Keep the snap in view at all times. However, that's sort of general guidance. You want to vary your position from time to time, because if you don't, smart defensive coordinators and or defensive players are going to use you partially for interference for them, and offensive coordinators and receivers, tight ends will do the same for them. So don't become part of the play. Vary your position so that your location is not going to be predictable. As Michael mentioned, along with the referee, the umpire counts A players and gives a signal, and also looks for numbering requirements as well as ineligible receivers. The umpire needs to be alert for interference with the snap, a false start, or disconcerting signals by B. They'll note the position of the ball between the hash marks, because that'll be important if we have a foul or an incomplete pass where the ball needs to go back to the previous spot. They'll also note the B players on the line of scrimmage and in the free blocking zone. Once the ball is snapped, the umpire should read run or pass by reading the blocks of the center and the guards. If there's a run, you want to look for the point of attack, paying particular attention to free blocking zone restrictions. If the play goes wide, move towards the play officiating from the inside out. The umpire needs to look for illegal use of hands or arms and other fouls near the neutral zone. Needs to be alert for ineligible receivers and the point at which a forward pass strikes anything. If there's a fumble beyond the neutral zone, the umpire should be assisting in determining who secured possession. And also, in the process of doing all of this, observes action of players in and just behind the neutral zone. Typically, the umpire is not going to sound a whistle unless the covering official is not in position. As we said, though, the umpires are solely responsible for spotting the ball. So once play's over, they'll spot the ball for the next down.
Yeah,
that's the
I cut you off, Ryan. I think I was going to say using a whistle as umpire is something that most folks I do. Some of the best umpires I've watched, they're good at using their voice too. Getting in there and identifying when the play's over.
Yeah, the umpire can use the voice. For us, if we've mentioned this in a prior episode, but if you have a triple option team or an RPO type of team where it's hard for us to see the ball from the sidelines, we really rely on the umpire to get in there with a hand up to let us know play's over so we can go ahead and whistle. Because those are those types of games, types of offenses where we really work hard to avoid the inadvertent whistle. But that's the umpire spot. Michael, as H&L, what are we doing on typical scrimmage plays?
All right, so this is our usual position on Friday nights here. So there's no pressure. We should be experts at this, right? So we talked about spotting the ball as the umpire, and after the umpire spots the ball, we're going to take our spot on the line of scrimmage. I'm straddling it, but again, some of these kids get to be pretty tall, so if you need to adjust your position, make sure you can see all the way down the line. We're going to signal the number of the next down. First, second, third, fourth. Now, obviously, if it's first, it's a different story, but I'm always holding my hand up for 2, 3, or 4. The line judge is going to count the B players. As the headline judge on Friday nights, I thankfully don't have to count anybody, so I get away with one there. It's a good habit, though, I think, as an H to identify the offense or the defense. You can help out there, so if you want to pick which side. I know in college the short wings are counting the offense, so that's something I try to practice as well. Either way, as a wing, identify the eligible receivers on your side, pick up the count of the referee or the umpire and make sure that you're on the same page so that way you know you have 11. And then we need to be alert for how many players in the backfield. We should have no more than 4, and then we should be looking for 7 on the offensive line. Now, they can have 10. That was a rule change. Remind me, Ryan. 2 years ago?
A couple years ago. Yeah, it's been a few years.
You can still play with
now.
10. So just because you don't have 7, as long as you don't have more than 4, you're okay there. So as we get into it, you're responsible as a wing for the player going in a motion away from you, and you maintain that if they come back to you. So if you've got a motion player going away from you and they stop and they come back to their position, that's going to be your responsibility the whole way. If they cross the center, then at that point, the other wing will then kind of take over for that. We're looking for false starts, encroachments, illegal shifts, that illegal motion we talked about. And then after the snap, we're talking about our keys. We'll talk about that later on. We're looking at our keys or reading the tackle to see if it's a run or a pass play. And then we're going to hold that line of scrimmage if it's a run play until that ball carrier crosses it. We want to work behind the play. It's safer that way. And I think Ryan and I have both experienced that.
Sure.
We're looking at the initial charge of those linemen right off the blocks just to see if we can kind of get a key on it. As Ryan alluded to earlier, the RPOs make it a lot tougher. We can help in some of those situations with ineligible downfields. It's not our primary, but Ryan's usually really good at getting those, and so is our umpire. If we've got a running play coming our way, stay on that sideline. Watch for the blocks by the offense. Look at the defense and see what they're doing. At this point, if it's coming your way, you have a tackle, maybe a receiver or 2, maybe you have a lead blocker coming around. That's what you're looking at. As the runner comes near the neutral zone, you're going to pick him up, and then when they cross, you're going to trail the play, as we talked about earlier. Once the ball's dead, sound your whistle, mark the forward progress with, if you can, your downfield foot. And Ryan and I have kind of practiced this over the years, and I think using your downfield foot looks really sharp. So if you're heading to your right, use your right foot. If you're heading left, use your left foot. If you're ambidextrous, it's probably pretty easy. If you're not, it might take, like me, it took a little bit of practice to use my opposite foot. So mark the spot of forward progress by squaring off. You might hear that if you're newer to officiating, squaring off is something that you might hear a lot. That's moving down the sideline directly and at a 90-degree angle, turning onto the field. Ryan does a really good job, I think, of moving with his hips open down the field, and that's something you want to have so you can see the whole play. And Steve talked about that, I think, a little bit when we had him on a couple weeks ago. But when you get to that spot, you're making a hard 90-degree turn to get onto the field and to get that spot. You don't want to round the corners.
Yeah, it's something that Michael and I both focus on a lot. It looks better. It's sharper. It's what the mechanics manual tells us to do. But the idea is that you're never stepping onto the field until you're getting to the spot, right? Because if you step on the field short of the spot, you're going to be rounding off or doing some other weird angle. The idea is you stay in the white until you're at the line that was gained. And that's when you come onto the field, and that's how you square off.
Yeah, if we started at, let's say, the 40 going out and it's a 3-yard gain, you're shuffling to the 43 and in the white, of course, and then you're coming out. And if it's a big gain of 20 yards, you're moving 20 yards downfield in the white, and then that would be the opposite 40 if my math works. Then you're coming out on that 40. You might see some officials kind of round that off and cut off the field, and that's some of the habits we want to try to break, and it just helps us look crisp. We want to keep the players in front of us. Don't let players kind of get behind you. In 5-man, there are some holes. And as a wing, if you come in too hard and you pass players, if things are chippy, you can possibly miss stuff, and you don't want to have players getting any action behind you. If the ball is down inbounds near the sideline and the line to gain is not achieved, wind the clock, and that's that kind of rotating arm signal. We'll wind it twice and then give our 40-second play clock with the hand up. If the ball is down inbounds into the sideline and the line to gain is made, then we're going to stop the clock. Then we will give the 40-second, and then we can look to our referee to say, hey, he was in bounds. That can be done with an 0-2-0. That can be done with a little finger twirl down by the hip. There's different options there. Communicate with your crew. If the ball is dead in a side zone between the numbers and the hashes, we're going to use our back judge to help relay it into the umpire. And if the run's to the opposite side, move down towards the sideline. Make sure the runner doesn't reverse their field. Watch the backside blocking. So you're looking for cheap stuff, cheap pushes in the back, clipping, any extracurriculars. You're watching for that kind of stuff. And then your opposite wing will get that spot, and then you will mirror them and then come onto the field. I would say, Ryan, I think that's a hard one sometimes for newer officials. It's so hard to not want to follow the ball. Do you have something you did to kind of break that?
Well, I think it's just experience, but I think ball watching is a habit that all of us still have at some point in time, regardless of experience. I mean, we all fall into it, and we're all guilty of it at points. I think the idea here and the way that you sort of work towards it is that if you think of let's say, so Michael and I are across the field, right? Let's say there's a pitch that goes towards Michael's sideline. If you stop and think about 5-man mechanics, the referee, the umpire, Michael, and the back judge are all going to be looking at that play. I'm the only person out there that can pick up the stuff in the middle of the field. Mm-hmm. So I need to focus on that, right? And it's the same opposite side, right? If it's coming towards me, Michael's the only one of the 5 of us who can pick up the garbage that takes place in the middle of the field. So if you think in terms of responsibility and trying to pick up, the silly stuff to keep things from devolving, I think that helps to keep your focus there.
Yeah, I mean, you might have 10, 12 players that you all of a sudden become responsible for. And the other thing, too, is if you're that backside wing trailing, still hustle down and get to that spot, right? Because let's say we're around a hash and it's an off-tackle player, something along those lines, and it's a crowded pile. Your umpire can come in there. He can turn around and get a backside spot. And our umpire knows that whether he's spotting off of me or spotting off of Ryan, it's going to be the same spot. He can, if there's a crowd in front of Ryan, he can turn and find me, and it's going to be the right spot, and vice versa. So hustle down, get that spot, and identify. But I will say, key caveat, make sure you know where your other wing official is before you enter the field. Correct. And if you don't, stay there.
Right.
I'm sure I could find a dozen plays where I overshot Ryan and I had to step back a yard or two and then come onto the field.
Yeah, we all do it. It happens, but you want to match up before you step out.
Absolutely.
When you can.
So we, in the RPO theme, if we have an option play, watch that action against the pitch man. If there is a pitch, you need to know whether it's forward or backwards. If it's backwards, we're going to signal with what we call a punch. That's just an extended arm into the backfield rather. And then we need to know if that pitch was beyond the neutral zone. If the pitch was from behind the line and backward, then we need to know where that pitchman is and keep officiating that. If it's from behind the line and forward, then we need to know that's a legal forward pass. So if it hits the ground, we're going to come up and signal incomplete. And, that can be tricky with a lot of these formations, and that's where some of your pregame and film watching can help. From beyond the line and backward, it's legal, but you should have a beanbag of the spot just in case. And from beyond the line and forward, it is an illegal forward pass at that point. So if we have an option play, they've crossed the neutral zone, and now that we have a forward pitch, that is a spot foul. So we need to get our flag on that spot, and then keep continuing to officiate because the play is not over yet. Now, if the runner goes out of bounds and you're silent, make your way to the out-of-bounds spot, killing the clock and continuing to watch the action around the sideline. Make sure there's nothing cheap. We're cleaning it up. And at the out-of-bounds spot, pivot to face the sideline to better observe the action. It's kind of hard to describe on a podcast, but if the runner goes out of bounds, the spot is important. But what's more important, I think, in my opinion, Ryan, chime in, is that action on the bench. If you have a red jersey go into a white bench, we need to know what's going on with those players.
Correct. And R and RB should be coming to help you. But if something happens before they get there, put a beanbag down to hold the spot and then get in there and clean that up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the primary focus there. And I think again, it's hard to kind of say it, but visually it looks like you're swinging kind of almost into the field. Your back is going to be towards the field. The front of your body will be facing that team bench. Again, your downfield foot will be marking that spot. And once you have a couple of plays under your belt, it kind of becomes second nature. You can mark that. You can see everything. You have good distance. You have good angles. So,
and that takes a while. It's hard to learn that on those out of bounds plays, you face out of bounds. It's an experience thing. And I certainly screwed up my fair share of those my first couple of years.
I'm going to give him some credit. The one official that I kind of watched, first time I watched him do it was Steve Martin. And again, I'm going to continue to sing his praises. I worked a game with him and I watched him kind of do this pivot thing. And I thought, oh, that's what that's supposed to look like. And it looked beautiful. It was flawless. So, what else is going on with the wings, Ryan?
Well, there's some things, obviously, despite the similarities between the positions, there's some things that are specific to H and some things specific to L. So H, of course, deals with the chains and with the box, right? So H sets the line to gain indicator. As Michael said, they'll mark the foremost point of the ball on the sideline with their downfield heel, facing the field of play while doing so. So don't look back at the chains in the box while you're doing that. The box man or woman will then set the box at that spot on the sideline, and the chains will then set based upon where the box is set. Whoever's doing the clip will place the clip on the back of the nearest big yard line, the nearest 5-yard line closest to the rear stake. And then the line to gain equipment is moved back to the rear of the restricted area. As we get close to the goal line, if we've got a first down inside of the 10, then the chains go down and all we use is the box. The manual advises to provide the down box operator with a beanbag in order to mark the line of scrimmage in case there's a play or a penalty where we need to reestablish the spot, or, practically speaking as well, if there's a play that comes at them and they drop the box and get out the way, so we know where we're setting it again. And of course, we've talked about this before several times. As H&L, you should know exactly where the line of scrimmage was on every play, right? So you know where it's snapped and what the line of gain is, so that if we need to fix something afterwards, we're not reliant on the box operator's beanbag on the field, right?
And when you get down to that goal line, make sure the chains are out of the way.
Right.
I'm usually hollering, hey, first and goal, box only. And, I normally tell my chain crew to just stop where you are and put them down. The chain should be back up at the 15 or even the 20. Don't let them bring the chains down and set them down inside the 5. That's a recipe for disaster.
Sure. Yeah. And so the chains, obviously, that's H's responsibility. L certainly has responsibilities as well. We've talked about this some previously when we talked about measurements. But as line judge, you're primarily responsible for determining whether the line to gain was made. The manual says that when the ball is dead, look through the forward progress spot to the line to gain indicator on the far sideline. And if they've made the line to gain, kill the clock with the overhead signal twice. I'm going to editorialize just a little bit here, but we've talked about this before as well, right? So with the proliferation of turf fields that are marked pretty evenly, we should know after every play, and Steve talked about this, right? We should know after every play whether we have a first down or not. Sometimes there's those big situations where you'll measure, I'll say for show, I don't know if that's the right term to use, but you measure
vanity, I think is the word.
Yeah. Persuasion? Is it a persuasive thing?
Sure.
So that everyone in the field knows. But I should know after every play on a turf field if we have a first down or not. Some of the grass fields that may not be marked exactly evenly or have some divots, or when you go out sometimes and you have some yard lines that are more of a yard curve than a line, then that gets a little bit more challenging. But in theory, we should know after every play if we have a first down or not. So again, if we've made the line to gain, kill the clock, indicate some signal to the umpire and referee that the line to gain was made, I usually just point downfield, with my index finger several times as a let's move. We're moving that way. If we're close though, and I'm not sure. So again, if it's a field where I'm just not sure, I need to let the referee know to come up and take a look to see if it's a first down. I don't necessarily stop the game clock at that point, unless it takes the referee some time to get there for some reason though. But if the game clock is stopped, it either means we have a first down or that we're going to have a measurement. Don't get in the habit of stopping the game clock to try to determine if there's a first down. Use that sparingly when you know you're going to need to measure or when you have a first down. Yeah. So that's the stuff specific to H&L. Michael, what's the back judge doing?
Back judges have a position roughly 20 yards in the defense side of the ball, 20 yards back from the line of scrimmage. You're going to count the B players and you're going to signal to your wing officials. Again, in the high school mechanics, that's the line judge and the back judge are counting the defense. You're going to have responsibility for the play clock and any delay of game. You'll give a visible signal for the last 5 seconds to the offense if there's no play clock on the field. Again, the next part is to read your keys, and you're looking for a run or a pass. We'll talk a little bit about keys later. I'm getting older, so when I work back judge, my first step is always backwards, and I think the manual does recommend that. Some of the younger guys out there can stay put, or if you're brave, move forward, but I can't do that anymore. When you have a run to either side of the field, keep the runner between you and the wing official. Observe the action in front of the runner. A lot of times you can help with that second level blocking. You want to stay deeper than the deepest receiver. I know it's hard, especially if you played the game and you were on the defensive side of the ball. Your body wants to kind of take that angle towards the play. Don't do that. Make sure you keep that good distance. You want to inside-out coverage. Try to stay in the hash marks if you can. It'll give you better angles and keep you better distance. If the runner breaks free, you're going to take him over, and you're going to stay out in front of that runner, and you're going to get to the goal line. As a back judge, that's your primary responsibility on an open field play like that. If the run is more than a few yards beyond a scrimmage and it ends in the sideline, move out to that sideline to help the wing get the ball back in like we talked about. And if something happens to go into the team area, if the player goes in there, opposite color jersey, go in there, help get him out and keep that bench clear. And when you're in that bench, you can use your whistle, but your voice sometimes is just as powerful. JP on our crew does a great job of, red out. And he's in the white bench and he's pulling red jerseys out. And that's him telling himself, I'm getting the red jerseys out of here. And he's helping players move out. He does a really good job of that. If the run, and as far as the back judge go, if a run ends outside the 9-yard marks, again, we talked about relaying the ball in. Really, you're kind of the rabbit there. So you'll get your workout in for sure. On the whole, Ryan, that's an individual breakdown. As a crew, I know we're looking for substitutions. We're all counting offense or defense in some way or another. What else as a crew should we be looking for?
The manual tells us that if the covering official stops the clock because we have a first down, or if the ball goes out of bounds, all crew members should echo the signal. So if we're killing the clock, it's not just the covering official. According to the manual, all 5 of us need to be killing the clock as well. Or if we have a ball that's dead in our area, then, that covering official sounds their whistle promptly once you see the ball. That's the key, right? See leather, see the ball. Don't guess at it. If you see a ball that's dead in player possession, that's when you sound the whistle. If the ball's not in your area, don't be blowing the whistle. That means that you're ball watching. That's what we're trying to avoid. Michael mentioned a few moments ago about keys. And we had this discussion pre-podcast, so I'll give you a peek behind the curtain. But keys, I think, are the one topic that are expressly designed to be discussed in any type of medium other than an audio medium like a podcast. But just to briefly go over this, keys, they're intended to help us determine coverage at the time of the initial snap. Keys are not something that we follow from snap until the end of the play. We're looking at the initial snap, because as the play develops, we will go into zones and we'll pick up things in our zones.
Yep.
The NFHS game officials manual, which all officials are sent every other year when the manuals are printed. But the NFHS manual has a really good discussion of formation strength, keys, and diagrams, and it's really required reading. The supplemental manual is good, but this is one area where you need to go to the original manual and learn it by heart. So again, we're looking at strength at the original formation, right? The back judge is responsible for determining and declaring strength of the formation. Strength is determined by the number of eligible receivers outside the tackle in the formation. So in short, when you hear strong side, weak side means there's more receivers to one area, right? So if you have trips on one side and you have a quarterback, numerically, you can't have trips on both sides. So if you see trips, that's your strong side. Okay.
Right.
If you've got twins, if you got two receivers on both sides outside the tackle, then you have a balanced formation. If your formation is balanced, strength is to the line judge's side. It is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any reasoning as to why. It's just that's the mechanic, and that's how we do it. So you're either going to have trips, and you go strength will be to the trip side. If you've got twins on both sides, then you go to the line judge's side. If you've got 2 and 1, then obviously the one with the side that has 2 is going to be your strong side, and so forth. Right? No receivers on one side, 1 on the other. Whichever side has more receivers, that's your strong side.
And there's some very good diagrams.
Right.
And again, we can't do it justice, but I can remember when I first started looking at those diagrams and going, who's doing what and going where. I think this is important as a crew, whether it's your first year together as a crew or maybe you've been officiating for 20 years, but you're with a new crew this year. Sure. or something along those lines. Get together with the 5 of you and just walk through it so everybody's on the same page, because looking at a piece of paper and then looking at 11 players on a field is completely different.
Yeah, this is a good thing to pregame, especially if you have a substitute for the week. So it's a good thing for you to pregame, and just constantly be looking over as well. So the back judge has the initial key. The wing officials are secondary. The back judge, according to the manual, declares the formation strength and should signal to the wing officials, then adjusting the back judge's initial position to favor the strong side. Again, go to the manual because it's just very hard to describe this verbally. But whichever side the back judge is going to, the back judge takes the widest receiver on the strong side of the formation. And if they're stacked, the back judge takes the foremost receiver. The wing official then takes the inside receiver or receivers. So according to the manual, if you have trips, back judge has the furthest receiver out. The wing has the 2 inner receivers there. And then on the opposite side, the wing official has whatever receivers are over there. Wing officials will key on receivers out of the backfield, who are inside the tackles. Obviously, the back judge can't really see those. So the wing officials are going to pick up the backs there. Motion can change the strength of formation. So keys, it's the best way that I've always heard it described. It's a snapshot at the time of the snap, right? Yeah. It's a snapshot when the ball is snapped. If that motion guy has made trips on one side, let's say you start with trips on one side, twins on the other. One goes in motion from the trip side to the other, and that becomes a trip side, and the ball snapped. That's your side of strength. So again, I can't do this justice through an audio mechanism. Please go to the NFHS manual. That's how you pick up keys there. Keys, though, are important for pass plays. So, Michael, let's go through scrimmage plays on pass plays, starting with the referee.
Sure. So we talked about, luckily, the referee's key is going to be the quarterback. That's a little inside joke there. But the referee is going to be in the same position we talked about, just as a running play. You're looking kind of through that quarterback, trying to get that far side tackle. And again, if there's trips involved, you might be changing tackles. We kind of alluded to that. You're looking at all the blocks behind the neutral zone, and you're going to stick with that quarterback. You're going to maintain a good distance, a healthy distance, and make sure you can see the angle of any oncoming defenders to that quarterback. If the QB is threatening on him, your attention has to be there. And when the pass is released, don't follow the ball. Stay with the passer and make sure that all the defenders coming in know that the ball's gone. You can say ball's away, ball's gone. I would stick to one of those two. Whatever comes natural, should be a word or two to indicate that. If the passer threatens the line of scrimmage, move up to the spot of the pass to determine where the passer's feet, where the ball was thrown. And make sure that we know if the feet were in or behind the neutral zone when the ball was released. If so, this could be the spot for a legal forward pass. So you're going to have your flag out and then keep officiating the play. Obviously, if the quarterback takes off and continues to run, we're going to a running play. Intentional grounding can get a little tricky, and this requires some help from your other crew members. The foul is called by the referee. That's outlined in the mechanics manual, but that doesn't mean the wings can't help. A lot of times you might have a receiver dumping or a quarterback dumping a ball. The referee may not know if it's a broken play, if there's a receiver in the area. So Ryan and I will come in sometimes. We'll signal incomplete and we'll point to maybe there's a back or a receiver or somebody in the area. And then our referee knows, okay, I don't have a flag. However, if it does go to an unoccupied area, the covering official should go to the referee and say, hey, I've got nobody there. Ours then going to make a judgment call as to whether or not the passer was out at the tackle box, or maybe maybe the arm was hit as the ball was thrown. That's very possible. You can then have that discussion and then drop the flag. It's okay to do that. That flag doesn't have to come out right away. But if you're going to have a discussion, just know where that pass was released. So oftentimes it's good to see that pass thrown and maybe go conference around that spot, and then you have an idea. From there, we'll go to the umpire. I think, is that next? Yeah, let's do the umpire. It's kind of anticlimactic there on the passer there, but or on the referee, excuse me. But that's you as the referee. You're looking predominantly at that quarterback. That's your key for pretty much the whole night. The umpire is, again, as we talked about, you're watching those blocks, use of hands. We talked about guard, center, guard, or guard, center, or center, guard, however you like to say it. You've got those three keys. Once you read pass, you're going to step towards the neutral zone. You're going to keep moving deliberately towards that line of scrimmage. That's going to get you out of the way. We talked about earlier, you don't want to be in the way of crossing routes or any pass routes that get you in trouble, and this helps you identify any ineligibles downfield as well. You're going to keep observing that action throughout the play. You're assisting the referee if the passer's feet were in or behind the neutral zone, as we talked about. You can help with that. And on passes over the middle, you can turn once the ball passes you, and then you can help look for any sort of trap or any sort of catch that might have bounced off the ground first. I guess it wouldn't be a catch in that case, but you can be looking for that kind of stuff. Then you can also assist the referee in ruling on any sort of touching, or I guess it's that tip signal. And again, not good for audio here. The making it rain signal, right? Is that a thing? Right? We're doing that. You're giving that tip signal because it's letting the referee know, it's letting the wings know, and your back judge can even see it too, that you had the ball tipped by a defender. Ryan, what's going on the wings once we snap the ball?
All right, well, pre-snap is exactly the same as a running play. So our positioning and responsibilities are exactly the same as if it's a rush. We observe our keys and read our tackle to determine run or pass. And we've talked in the past with RPOs. Sometimes that doesn't give you all the information. But generally read the tackle. Does he stand up? It's probably a pass. Does he go forward? Probably a run. The manual says stay on the line of scrimmage until receivers have gone 10 to 12 yards downfield, then move down your sideline and find the ball. I don't know. Again, I'm going to editorialize a bit. I don't fully agree with that. I think we have at least one needs to hold the line to assist in that ruling on forward passes. You also have those plays where the quarterback might pull it down and run and somebody needs to be there. So, I'm probably a little slower to move down as opposed to just seeing receivers have gone 10 to 12 yards and taking off. And Michael, I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
You got to think too, 10 yards sounds far, but when you see it on a field, 10 yards isn't.
Correct.
To me, if I move 10 yards downfield, or if a receiver's 10 yards downfield and I start moving, I can end up in the face of that receiver very quickly. So 10 yards is pretty comfortable for me because I still have good angles. We get to 15 and 20, I'm going to go. But I agree with you. You kind of have to feel it. If the quarterback is going away from you, I'm going to be more inclined to hold the line just because there's less likely he's going to throw that ball back over towards me. If the quarterback's coming near me, I might head downfield, but you have to be careful because you can get pinched very quickly. And when I say pinched, if you commit to go downfield and the quarterback starts to roll your way and then take off and you have defenders closing in, it can be a very ugly, ugly mess.
Correct.
So,
yeah. So I mean, that's just that's in practice. That's what we do. But just for sake of saying we're going through the manual says stay on the line of scrimmage until receivers have gone 10 to 12 yards downfield, then move down your sideline and find the ball. So that is official IHSAA manual statement, not necessarily a Ryan and Michael statement. So
there you go.
Do with that as you will. On a quick pass to a receiver on your side, you're responsible for determining whether the pass was backward or forward. If it's backward, signal with a punch toward the backfield. Stay off the field as you're moving downfield. Be prepared to rule on interference by either team. Give an incomplete signal twice, and then the 40-second clock if a pass is incomplete. If you need to get a ball in, get a ball in. Be prepared to adjust if the passer decides to run. Look for blocks by receivers coming back toward the ball if that happens. Again, you're responsible for your entire sideline and for the forward progress of the runner. As for the back judge, like us, the pre-snap positioning and responsibilities are the same as on running plays. They'll read keys at the snap, and their first step is backward. Make sure you stay behind the deepest receiver. Don't get beat to the goal line. Don't get beat deep.
Nope.
On a long pass, you should be stationary on the goal line when the ball gets there. When the ball's in the air, move quickly toward it. Look for interference. If there's a long gain, then you have the forward progress spot because, like on our crew, Michael will get there before I do, but we're going to be coming up a little bit slower than our back judge who can cover a whole lot of ground, thankfully.
Yes, he can.
Back judge, if the pass is incomplete in your area, sound the whistle and give the incomplete signal, followed by the 40-second signal for the play clock. Retrieve the ball and get it back in. If you have a complete pass in your area, sound the whistle once it's dead and then move to the forward progress spot. If it's a first down, then go ahead and stop the clock. All officials need to be aware of touching or catching by an ineligible player, looking for players who go out of bounds or out of the end zone while running a pass route and come back in. Also, we're looking for catch/trap plays. If the ball bounces, give an incomplete signal. If unsure, move toward the spot, making eye contact with other officials. If no one has called it incomplete by the time you get to that spot, it's a catch. So the high school axiom here, when in doubt, it's a catch.
Yeah, we talked about that a few weeks ago. Good point.
Yeah, so those are scrimmage plays. Everything gets a little bit different as we get into the red zone towards the goal line. So, Michael, why don't you talk about goal line officiating?
This is where we start to earn our money, right? The red zone, like Ryan talked about, that's at the 25-yard line. Everything is still normal. Everything as far as pass plays and scrimmage plays, everything's normal. So when the ball gets to 25, back judge should start initially on the goal line. So that is different than the 20 we talked about. And you're backing up a little bit more. And begin each down there until the ball reaches the 10, and we'll talk about that later. So you're responsible as the back judge on the goal line for all the running plays. Wing officials have to be conscious about that approaching goal line and coordinating that goal line coverage with the back judge and knowing who's going to cover it when. Again, we will talk about that. All officials need to be aware that all penalty enforcements against B could be half the distance at this point. So once you get inside the 30, all your 15s are halves. Once you're inside the 10, then all your 10s are, or the 20, your 10s are halves. Inside the 10, your 5s are halved. Did I say that right? I did. That was some quick math.
Good job.
Depending on the penalty and location, the officials should be in there with the referee and the umpire when reporting that foul, and we can all coordinate that together so we're marking off the right amount. The last thing you want to do is mark off 15 yards for pass interference from the 28. I'll just say that.
In high school, in college.
Well, that's a good point.
Yes.
That's a great point. In high school, yes. Now in college, that'd be perfectly acceptable. There you go. The crew should communicate every play to verbalize and signal what's going on and be alert for any possible field goal attempt that might come on fourth down, as we talked about a little earlier. So now the goal line comes in play. So once the ball reaches the 10-yard line, now we're talking more about our goal line mechanics and our goal line officiating. So normal scrimmage play mechanics are going to be modified. Your referee is not going to signal a touchdown until they get any sort of confirmation from the wing officials. And what I'm talking about when they say the referee, they're talking about facing the press box and giving that signal. Make sure you stay well in the offensive backfield during the play, and keep in mind that if there's a turnover, you're now responsible for A's goal line, so you need to get down there. When the covering official does signal touchdown, take a peek around, make sure there's no fouls. Ryan, you want to take it from here for the umpire and the wings?
Sure. The umpire, if the defensive lineup allows, you should move a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage than you normally would if we're, say, at the 40, 50-yard line, somewhere in there. The umpire does not signal for a touchdown.
Nope.
The umpire should stay off the goal line while the ball is alive so that you're not blocking the vision of the wing officials. On runs that occur between the tackles, find the ball at the conclusion of the play. Don't indicate whether or not there's a score. If the wing officials don't have a spot, they'll come in and you should communicate with them that you have the ball. Don't make any signals to the wing officials. They'll determine whether there was a score or not. Now, those wings, H and L, we need to make sure that the sideline area between us and the goal line is absolutely clear. No one should be there.
No
I am
one.
more strict about my sideline inside the 10 than anywhere else on the field. Photographers, statisticians, ball boys, they're gone. I'm moving
Right.
backwards at an angle, they're gone.
It's not the players at this point. You have just
Correct.
game day personnel or other administrators that think it's a free
Correct.
spot, and no, put them on the track.
Correct. Because again, the goal line extends beyond the pylon, right? So if a pylon is touched, the goal line can extend out. So you may well be backing up and you need to make sure there's no one behind you there. Here we're going to reverse our normal run mechanics. So Michael's talked about it. We've talked about it many times. Normally we want to trail a run. However, once we get inside the 10, we have to lead the play to the goal line. Mm-hmm. You want to be set up and stationary on the goal line, ready to make a ruling once the ball gets there. If the ball is snapped between the 10 and the 5, your first step at the snap should be toward the goal line to get your momentum moving in that direction. Then you read the play and react accordingly. If the ball is snapped between the 5 and the goal line, go directly to the goal line at the snap and remain there throughout the play. If the play ends up short of the goal line, work your way back to the forward progress spot at the conclusion of the play. Once you're at the goal line, though, again, stay there. Don't give it up for any reason. If the play comes at you, back up along the goal line extended, but don't get off the goal line. Again, that's why it's important to make sure there's nobody there.
Right.
If the pylon's threatened, that causes you to back off along the goal line extended and it's a touchdown, move up to the pylon when you signal. Pivoting is necessary to continue observing players in the end zone and or out of bounds. If it's short of the goal line, come in as far as necessary to accurately spot the ball, giving the signal to start the 40-second clock, and then giving the signal for the next down. If you have to sell a call, come in hard. Don't run around players, but stay on your line.
I want to talk about something real quick, Ryan, which you talk about pivoting. A lot of times if you go watch some older games, college, NFL, or whatever, you'll see those referees, and this isn't knocking them, this is just the style at the time was to focus, and they're on that goal line, arms go straight up, and they're looking down that line, and they may not have any idea of the action going on behind them. And again, I'm talking going back to like the 70s and the 80s, right? Years and years ago, right? So this is not a knock on the officiating, it's just the time. If you've got a pylon dive, and it's right there, and you've got 2 offensive players, 3-4 defensive players, like Ryan said, pivot with them, stay on that goal line, just turn your body as you give the signal so you can still see all that action. It's very important so we don't have any dead ball fouls. Sorry, Ryan, go ahead.
No, I definitely agree with that. So I talked just a moment ago about coming in hard to sell the call. Yep. Let's say it's on the 1 foot line or something like that. That's when you really want to crash in hard just to let everybody know you've got a spot and you're confident in that spot. Don't ever run around to players because that's going to take you off your line. If you need them to move, then get them out the way and just then keep coming in on your line. Mm-hmm. You have to see a live ball in player possession before signaling a touchdown. Or as we talked a moment ago, if you can't see the ball, come in hard, straddling the goal line. Now you want to come in on the field side, as opposed to the end zone side, but come in, don't make a signal, and then let the umpire find the ball. If it's past the goal line, if it breaks the plane, go up, touchdown. If there's a pass play into the end zone, stay at the pylon and pivot to watch the action there. If there's a fade pass into the corner or along the sideline, work with the back judge. If you have the receiver out of bounds or the pass otherwise incomplete, then signal it as such. If you have a good catch, don't make a signal. Look at the back judge who should be moving down the end line toward you. If the back judge is not signaling it incomplete, then you both go up for a touchdown. Again, we talked about earlier, if we're down here, the chain should be down. 8 should make sure the chains are down, and we only have the box down there. Michael, anything else for the back judge to do at the goal line?
At this point, if we're inside the 10, the back judge is going to go to the end line and stay there. You're not going to come off of that. You need to know if the pass is complete before touching that end line or going beyond that end line. You're responsible for knowing if a receiver leaves the field of play by going out behind that end line or touching out of bounds. In such cases, beanbag the spot where the receiver goes out and flag the spot and then continue to officiate the play. Flag if needed, I guess I should say. On fades back to the corner like Ryan talked about, we're coordinating with the wing official. If you see that receiver out of bounds or the pass is incomplete, immediately come in, kill it, blow it dead, and signal incomplete. If you have the receiver catching the ball in bounds, don't make a signal right away. Instead, look at the other wing official who should also be looking towards you. And again, like Ryan talked about, going up together. We don't have to mirror touchdown signals all the time. We can coordinate that with each other. We use nods on our crew. We look across. If there's a run, if we're on the 4 going in and the run's to Ryan's side, Ryan's signaling touchdown. I'm not doing anything there. If we're on the 12 and we're going in and it's kind of to my side and we cross the goal line, our back judge is on the goal line there, I give a little nod and I just kind of make a fist right by my hip just to say I have him in bounds all the way. There's no need to mirror touchdown signals. Sure. I think I covered everything there. Ryan, do you want to add anything?
No, you got it. I mean, if you're going up, it's because you've seen it. If you can't see the ball across, you shouldn't mirror somebody else's signal. But yeah, so that's a good discussion of what we do going in at the goal line. There's also what's called reverse goal line mechanics, right? So the offense takes control of the ball close to their own goal line. So when we have the ball snapped inside A's 5, it's normal scrimmage play mechanics with some modifications. So the referee starts on the end line. He's responsible for the end line, except on a pass play where the wing officials have dropped into pass coverage. Then the R stays with his quarterback and is responsible for the end line and the goal line. Mm-hmm. Snapping inside the 5, H&L are responsible for the goal line. At the snap, they should move initially to the goal line and then officiate back upfield. So the theme here for the wings is that if the ball is ever snapped inside of a 5-yard line, you go back to that goal line, whether you're going in or coming out.
That's a great point.
Yeah, ball snapped inside the 5, get to the goal line. The umpire here needs to remind the referee that all penalties against A would be half the distance, again, for reverse goal line mechanics. Mm-hmm. If it's snapped between the 5 and the 10, R is responsible for the goal line and the end line. He assumes an initial position as close to the goal line as is safe, and wider than normal, depending on the formation. When it's inside A's 10, R, H, and L should communicate on every play, reminding one another of goal line responsibilities. If there's a safety, the covering official responsible for the goal line should signal it. Michael, I think we've talked about everything that can occur during regulation. What do we do for overtime?
Overtime is something that I think is worth pre-gaming almost every week. We're getting ready to go into week 5 in the high school season, I believe.
6.
6, that's right. So I think there's been a couple overtime games thus far, so it's always good to be prepared. At the end of the fourth quarter, going into that overtime, again, we have to make sure there's no, and we're in the action, we just hit zeros. We're going to make sure there's no other fouls and no crazy timing errors and no other obscurity that has happened. After the period is ended and the score is tied, we're going to send both teams to the timeout, or both teams to the team box, and we're going to have a 3-minute intermission. And during that point, the crew is going to meet in the center of the field, and we're going to briefly talk about what we're talking about now. We're going to talk about those overtime rules and the procedures going on, including whether there's any penalties that need to carry over, and then we're going to get ready for a coin toss. So at this point, we've done one coin toss at the beginning of the game. We will now do a coin toss for overtime. H&L should inform their coaches of their sideline of any sort of carryover penalties that we had before that coin toss begins, because that may change what they want to do in terms of offense or defense or which way we're going. We're going to do our normal mock coin toss procedures. The winner of the toss will have the choice of either defense or offense first, or they're going to designate the end of the field where we're going to put it in play. And the loser of the coin toss will have the remaining choice. R indicates the winner of the choice by placing a hand on the shoulder, just like we're doing it at the beginning of the game, making a good show for TV. And the team captains are then arranged facing their goal lines again, just like we show at the beginning of the game. The crew is then going to move briskly to the succeeding spot to begin that overtime period. And again, normally that's going to start on the 10-yard line, but again, as we talked about, there could be potential fouls that may carry over. There's an intermission. If we have a continued tie after the first overtime period, there's an intermission of 2 minutes, which the teams can hold conferences, get water. And during that intermission, the H&L should determine the overtime choices of their respective teams, with the loser of the initial coin toss choosing first this time. So we're going to flip it. And then the other team has the same options. If there's additional overtime periods needed, the first options will be alternated. There's no coin toss other than that first coin toss we had at the end of the fourth quarter. Ryan, are there any other highlights here in the overtime section we should talk about?
It's worth reviewing the rules for the overtime procedures. That's the mechanics of it, but make sure you're sharp on the rules as to, it's dead if the defense intercepts or picks up a fumble. They could score with a safety or a touchdown, but it would be a very, very unusual circumstance for the defense to score in overtime. But
Correct.
that's another thing worth pregame each week. But once you get through overtime, it's time to get off of the field, right? So as soon as possible, once the game's over, the crew needs to leave the field together. We've talked about this before. Don't shake hands, pat each other on the back or anything. Wait for all that until you get to the locker room. Don't seek out or avoid coaches after the game. If there's a coach between you and your exit point, you can shake a hand or say good luck the rest of the season, whatever it is, but don't run out of your way to seek them out. Your sole purpose, according to the mechanics at this point, is to get off the field. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
We've been fortunate this year and in years past, a lot of good sportsmanship. And sometimes there's players that want to say, hey, thank you, Mr. Official. Thank you. And they may want to approach you, just say, good luck, men, or good luck, men or ladies, and you need to move on because it doesn't look good.
Yeah. One other thing, don't discuss the game on the field or make public statements about the game to the news media. I've been fortunate. I've never had media ask me about it, but should that happen, you're getting to the locker room and you're not discussing the game. So that's us getting off the field. Sometimes we have some paperwork after. There's reports to our state association because our jurisdiction continues for the purpose of completing those reports that we might have for disqualifications, unsportsmanlike conduct situations, or some concussion reports. We need to submit those reports online. And if you're an Indiana official, those forms are under the officials tab on your My IHSAA dashboard. There's unsporting behavior reports that we use for unsportsmanlike conduct penalties, either against the coach or another non-uniform personnel, to report the disqualification of a player or non-player, to report fighting, or to report something else that has to deal with unsportsmanlike behavior. We need to submit those to our Assistant Commissioner, Robert Falcons, by email prior to 9:00 a.m. Eastern Time, the day after the contest, right? So your game ends on Friday. Those reports have to be in through my IHSAA as well as by email to Mr. Falcons by 9:00 a.m. Saturday morning. The report needs to indicate the date and location that it occurred, a description, the opponents, the time, situation, and score of the game, and a factual description of the incident. Include verbatim language when possible. If you have something that was based on language, give the number and name of the offender, the period and time, and a description of their conduct. Cite to rules providing for any penalties assessed, including disqualification. Here, you want to state facts, not opinions, and include in your report instances of non-cooperation by team personnel if you try to obtain a player or somebody else's name. You also need to indicate the names and positions of the officials. So those are sort of the bad reports. What about the good reports, Michael?
We have good reports. You're right. The IHSAA here in Indiana, we also like to know anybody that has outstanding sportsmanships. They want to hear about that. That goes kind of above and beyond the levels of sportsmanship because they recognize that. So we have those reports too to provide any identifying information to that school or anybody involved or any game personnel. And again, same thing, date and location and what was going on and a description of what you saw because it is important and we do want to preach good sportsmanship throughout the season and as we continue to grow both as athletes and as officials. So Ryan also alluded to concussion reports. That is also something important we need to put out there. We need to fill those out when the official removes an athlete from a contest who has any sort of signs of or symptoms of a concussion, headache, dizziness, confusion, that kind of stuff. This needs to be completed as soon as possible, no later than 24 hours, and we need to note that the report is only required if the official who it only needs to be done by the official who removed the player from the game. The report looks for identifying information regarding the player from the contest, so name, number, all that, and team. There are also some other miscellaneous reports that we can provide as well to the IHSAA. Any sort of hazardous conditions in the field that couldn't be taken care of, some weird obstacles, problems with any sort of game equipment or clock operators, anything like that, any dangerous conditions that we had to face. And the important part here is not so much that we're reporting everything, it's just to kind of cover ourselves for safety, or if there's any sort of discrepancy that just needs to be discussed amongst the officials, the IHSAA, or the schools, we can take care of that. I think that hits on all the game points. And Ryan, by golly, I think we made it through the manual.
With that, folks, the manual is dead. Long live the manual. Thank you for joining us once again for another episode of Learn Your Stripes. We'll be back next week where we'll have a guest and we'll discuss some additional questions and topics that we've been provided, and we look forward to having those discussions. We appreciate you submitting those to us, and we're sure that we'll hit on those and many other topics in the next few episodes. As always, though, tonight we're going to leave you with a play to consider.
Okay, it's 4th and 10 for K from K's 5-yard line. K1's punt from his own end zone is muffed by R1 at the K12, rebounds back into K's end zone where it is recovered by K, who is immediately tackled. And as always, we want to know the ruling, both high school and college, down, distance, game clock, and play clock.
We'll discuss that play at the start of the next episode. In the meantime, if you want to let us know what your ruling would be, or if you have any questions or feel we made a mistake, please email us at learnyourstripes@gmail.com. Also, if you have other questions or topics for us to discuss on the next few episodes, please email us there as well. You can find episodes or obtain an RSS link to directly download all episodes into your podcast app of choice at learnyourstripespodcast.com. Please also follow us on Facebook at Learn Your Stripes Podcast and on Twitter at LYS_podcast. If you enjoy the podcast, please rate us 5 stars and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or your app of choice. You can also find us on Discord, where we can have ongoing discussions of rules, mechanics, and play scenarios. Separate channels are set up for high school and college discussions, as well as the plays of the week. We'll see you back here next week. In the meantime, keep learning your stripes.
Thank you, everyone.